What's up, my Beardos and Weirdos? It's One Topic here, and today we're jumping into r/SuperNovaRevenge. We have one story to go through today. It is very long. It is called Revenge of the Bullied, the Butterfly Effect. Now, I think we can add a little bit of salt to this and say anything you read on the internet that you should take with a grain of salt. This one might take a couple grains, but I'll let you decide whether or not this is real or if this is a little bit of r/that happened. Let's jump right into it. Revenge of the Bullied, the Butterfly Effect. Reposting this from r/NuclearRevenge, since it was suggested that it would also be appreciated here. The prelude. I was a sweet, nerdy boy when I was a child. I was interested in science, computers, avionics, and mechanics. I was also slightly on the heavier side, but not so much that it would disqualify me from playing sports with other kids. In my school, I was generally liked by my peers, so I have never been in physical conflict. Until that summer. When I was 10, my parents sent me to the summer camp for 2 weeks. This was something I was looking forward to for months. As soon as we arrived at the camp, things have gone sideways pretty quickly. I don't remember what exactly started the bullying, and I have a crapload of repressed memories about that period, but I do remember this one guy in particular. Let's call him Ringleader, RL. I tried to resist the bullying and fight back, but he was 2 to 3 years older, and the difference in sheer physical power was overwhelming. He also got several other boys and girls on his side, so it was impossible for me to mount any kind of effective defense. The fact that the camp supervisors, the adults, knew about this and ignored this entirely did not help either. Keep in mind that this was during the 90s in a post-Soviet country. Cell phones were not a thing back then, so I've had no option to contact my parents about what was going on. My mornings at the camp, and I mean every single morning, would start with RL and several other of his shizhead friends throwing a bedsheet over me while I was still sleeping and beating me up. They called this the blanket. I never knew who exactly was present as I was busy trying to cover my head and face from the blows. This would repeat in some shape or form several times over the day. Basically every time the supervisors were not present, and sometimes even in the middle of the night. Some nights I would wake up basically covered in spit and snot, while RL was waiting there laughing with his band. They of course restricted me from using a bathroom to clean myself up, and this was a point of immense entertainment and bragging stories for them. In one instance, I remember RL getting up from his bed during the night, pissing on me while I was asleep, and then waking the whole camp up, telling everyone that I have wet the sheets like a little baby. I was even reprimanded by the supervisors, and the nickname Pish Boy stuck for the whole remainder of the hell camp. The RL even tried to coax me to give him a "Hey Jay" on one occasion in order for him to stop bullying me. Rest assured, he was not successful. I was defeated, but not broken. After returning from the camp, I have told my parents about some of the stuff, but I kept the most hardcore parts to myself. I was too ashamed. My father was an ex-soldier and a senior-ranking intelligence officer/investigator at the time, but even he was unable to do much about it within the limits of the law. When my father tried to confront him, the RL's father basically told us to fuse off, and to add insult to injury, blamed the situation on me for being a little... This was done over the fusing intercom in front of their fusing house. He did not even see us. I don't mean to go into too much detail here, but the fact is that this summer effectively ended my childhood, and started a chain of events that would end up with me being the way I am now. The long-term impact. You see, in my mid-20s, I have been diagnosed with borderline antisocial personality disorder. Basically, I am a sociopath. Apart from other things, this means that I have very little capacity for empathy or any other emotion for that matter. I can, on occasion, get happy, angry, sad, or even scared. But the stimuli for this have to be pretty strong, and I also have to choose to feel something. I, in particular, do have a deep distrust towards authorities, hate incompetence and neglectfulness, and do not shy from physical, psychological, or emotional confrontation if I deem it necessary. This personality adjustment is not entirely a bad thing for me either. I am able to remain entirely composed in high stress and or hostile situations, and can also read people extremely well, since my biases and emotions rarely play a role in my assessments. This led me to some pretty interesting career choices over the years, since people with my disposition are very rare and valuable in different roles. Contrary to popular belief, sociopaths are not entirely malicious. We do not go out of our way to harm some random person just for the shiz and giggles, or because we're bored. We need a damn good reason to do nefarious shiz. But when we have one, we execute flawlessly. Fast forward 10-ish years. I was working as a security guard in one of the more frequented bars in my city. This was not the kind of a security guard that you would imagine guarding a mall or pulling a night shift in an administrative building. We always worked in teams of 2, and instead of badges and uniforms, our standing equipment would consist of civilian clothing, a melee weapon of our choosing, leather gloves, and a concealed firearm, which I fortunately never have had to use. We were of course prohibited from drinking in the establishment, even on off-duty hours, but were otherwise required to socialize with the patrons and to generally appear non-threatening. Most of the nights, it would be pretty quiet and mellow, since most of the people knew not to fuse around with the staff or other customers, and even appreciated the extra layer of security. On one such night, I was sitting and chatting with some of our regulars. Part of the job, appear normal and non-threatening. When all of a sudden, the RL enters the establishment. He did not recognize me so far, and he also appeared drunk as hell. However, in the short time, he started verbally abusing one of our waitresses. In circumstances like these, we were employed a one-strike rule. You get one warning from the staff. If you did not change your behavior on the spot and permanently, you would be forcefully removed. My colleague, who was closer and had a better overview of the situation, slowly approached the guy and asked him to stop insulting the waitresses. Although I did pay attention, I wanted to distance myself from the situation as much as possible, since I knew that if the RL recognized me, the situation would probably escalate rapidly. Suddenly, the RL grabbed an empty bottle of beer from the table and hit the colleague over his right elbow, doing some pretty significant damage. He threw the bottle away and ran for it immediately. I quickly checked on my colleague, instructed the staff to call the cops, and then followed RL outside. As soon as I got out, I realized the motherfuser, RL, was completely sober and that he had 2 other friends outside. They did this on purpose, and they were trying to provoke a street fight all along. I was unsure if he knew who I was, or if he was targeting me on purpose, but I was not 10 years old anymore. I took out my baton and proceeded with the engagement. The motherfuser even had the balls to call me a little boy, and asked for a one-on-one without the baton. It took them like 5 seconds to realize that they've made a mistake. They did not bring any weapons, so as soon as the first one fell to the ground, the RL and his remaining friend decided to flee. I was not about to let the RL get away with this kind of bullshiz. I caught up to him in less than 100 meters. I did actually only use the necessary force to make him stop and comply to my kind request to come back to the front of the bar and let the cops sort things out. As we relatively calmly waited for the police to arrive, I realized he indeed did not know who I was, and I was not about to spoil the fun. They arrived like 3 minutes later. They informed me that they were looking for a group of guys provoking fights in this manner over the last month, and asked if we wanted to press charges. Of course we did. My colleague, who almost got his elbow shattered, was unable to attend work for several months. His friend that I had to put down in front of the bar even tried to press charges against the establishment, but it was quickly dismissed as reasonable self-defense, since there was no lasting damage. I assume my name must have come up during the proceeding, but the RL never connected the dots between myself as a 10-year-old boy and my new self. The best part? The RL was already up for sexual assault charges, and while arresting the RL, the kind officers even found drugs on the dumb motherfuser. It was just a small amount of ganja, but you could get served with some serious time just for that back then. Of course, he claimed somebody had planted the drugs. Why would anybody do that to him, though? I'll never know. Lots of repressed memories, as I have said. In the end, he was sent to jail for 3 years. Did I mention that my father was an intelligence officer? I believe I did. Well, my father was already dead by this time, but most of his old friends were not. Some of them still worked with the law enforcement. One was even overseeing the guards in the jail that RL was sent to at the time. I made sure that my father's friend remembered what happened to me in that summer camp. To put this into context, back at the time our jails were pretty rough. Several of the people working there were still from the old guard, trained and taught by the Soviets. This was certainly not a summer camp. Fast forward 5 years, the reckoning. I was now running security at the establishment, but the company grew a little bit. We now owned the whole building, which consisted of several stories. Some of our duties consisted of making sure that the upper stories were empty during the nights, as the building was still technically accessible to the public because the bar was open 24/7. During the winter months, we've often had homeless people trying to sneak past us and hide within the building, since it could get as low as -30°C during the nights. Even if it put our jobs at risk, we've had an unofficial understanding with the security guys. As far as the homeless people were not littering the place, we're not bringing alcohol or raising commotion, and got out before 6 in the morning. We let them sleep and even wash in the unused utility rooms. We even sneaked some blankets in. We were not animals and realized these people had nowhere else to go. On one such night, I was checking the floors, making sure that nothing nefarious was going on, when suddenly I hear somebody snoring in one of the utility rooms. I knew it was one of the homeless people, but I still needed to check it for damage and alcohol. Upon closer inspection, I found RL sleeping there. He lost a lot of weight from the last time I've seen him, and was in overall bad shape. Later I learned that he had some serious mental and emotional problems because of the treatment he got in prison. Basically, he was bullied heavily by the inmates, and the guards did absolutely nothing about it. This led to heavy substance abuse once he got released, eventually getting him into some serious debt. And not the nice clean debt towards the bank, I mind you. His parents had to eventually sell the house just to cover it for him. They moved to a small apartment and kicked him out onto the streets. Standing there, I'm thinking about cutting the guy some slack. Thinking he's been through enough already, I turned towards the door, intent on leaving him be. Then I remember how he fusing peed on me while I was asleep, and made it look like I wet the bed. I remember how he and his punks beat me several times a day for 2 weeks straight. I remember him barring me access from the bathrooms while I was covered in dried snot and spit, and laughed and bragged about it later. I remember him trying to coax a hand out of a 10-year-old boy. I remember his shiz of a father blaming me for all that over the intercom. I remember him injuring my colleague 5 years ago just to stir shiz up. And I think about the girl he tried to assault. I break. I put my gloves on and drag the guy by his neck out into the freezing cold. I can clearly see he does not fully comprehend what is happening to him, still half asleep. Once outside, he starts to fusing beg. He is trying to appeal to my sense of humanity. Then he gets angry. I quickly reaffirm that he is in no position to be aggressive towards me or anyone else, and remind him not to make the same mistake 5 years ago. Then he remembers. "You got me into jail 5 years ago." "You got yourself there, pal." "Why are you doing this to me?" "I don't know. I'm just a horrible kind of person. I genuinely enjoy this." "What have I ever done to you?" "Nothing really. I would stop, but you'd have to give me a hand first." This gives him pause. Now I can almost see him connecting the dots in his stupid little head. The wheels are crunching for a while. He then wants to say something. But I see he realized. He realized everything. He opens his mouth, but not an iota comes out. He simply turns on his heel and takes on into the freezing night. Later that night, I let all the security guards know that he is the one who assaulted our guy some years ago, and he is not to be allowed to stay anywhere near the building under any circumstances. The aftermath. I am now working for an entirely different field in a different company. I am head of IT and R&D branch, but are often invited to lead negotiations by other department heads, particularly the more problematic, hostile kind. The kind where customers try to renegotiate prices after our part of the contract is fulfilled, or refuse to pay for services and work done at all. My particular talents come in pretty handy in these situations. I know how it sounds, but this is all within legal means. It's just that my shizzy country has pretty shizzy judicial system, and virtually zero protection against customers screwing contractors/providers after they finish the job/deliver the product. Our company is currently entering a deal to acquire a small business, providing various recreation services, including running summer camps for children. As far as I can tell, some of the employees have been working there for more than 20 years. RL survived the winter. He lost some fingers due to the frostbite, but nothing major. I still sometimes see him around the city, and it always puts a smile on my face. I make a point of giving the poor guy some cash each time I meet him, since I know he will inevitably spend it on drugs and booze. I'm going to call all this some r/that happened. I think when I'm editing this is going to be 100% r/that happened. That's what's going on. Alright, my Beardos and Weirdos, that was r/SuperNovaRevenge, and I noticed that at the end of when I was done editing that I had actually left a note for myself in that in that bit of audio saying that I was predicting it to be r/that happened, and as I was cutting through it I realized, yeah, Yeah, that does seem to be some r/that happened. But hey, Russia Revenge. Still a good story, entertaining to go through, and if any or all of those experiences are real, I am sorry to hear that you went through that, OP, but good on you for being able to get back at them and for being in a position where you can actually set a better precedent for future campgoers. Reading how many layers were here, and how throughout all of this you still had compassion for those less fortunate. Giving those homeless people somewhere to sleep at night, especially in the winter, is something that I think we should all keep in mind when we're complaining about the snow or complaining about how we get cold when we're inside. Just remember, there are people that are sleeping outside. So, good on you, OP. Alright, my Beardos and Weirdos, that was r/SuperNovaRevenge. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this story, and thank you to everyone who's been subscribing lately. It's been awesome to see everyone jumping in and really enjoying these videos. Until the next one, where we take it one topic at a time.